Northwest Rebellion, presented by Eric C. and Polly F.
In 1880, CPR began to build the railway system that united all of Canada. Naturally, it was expensive and cut deeply into the Canadian government's pockets. As a result, the government looked towards the prairies. They saw that if they were to get that 16 million acres of fertile land, they'd be able to obtain $71 million. Not willing to jeopardize the potential revenue by complying to the Aboriginal demands, they antagonized them instead by making it hard for the population to get land titles, as well as cutting the budget of the Indian Department. For the Métis who were promised aid in their goals to become successful farmers, but not seeing the government act on their promise made them furious. They realized that there is a difference in treatment compared to the other provinces, but because they now faced starvation, and the only provisions that they got were from the government on the condition that they behaved, they were able to do little to nothing about their situation. In the year 1884, the Métis grew desperate and sent 4 men to go to Montana, where Louis Riel lived. As a self-proclaimed Métis savior, Riel readily came back, but as someone who recently started a rebellion, his presence alarmed those in the Canadian government. Multiple parties informed the government that the Métis were taking up arms, and further investigation by the government decided that the threat was real. Later in that year, Riel, with the help of Dumont, created the Bill of Rights that basically listed the grievances of the Métis. Unfortunately, it was blatantly ignored. This was the first clash between the NWMP and the Métis. It began with negotiations, but that quickly disintegrated when the 2 Métis delegates were shot after trying to disarm an NWMP soldier. Within 30 minutes, 12 NWMP soldiers were dead and another 25 wounded, whereas the Métis only had 5 to 6 dead and 3 wounded. The NWMP retreated, resulting in the Métis' victory. News of the Métis victory spread fast amongst the native tribes and soon inspired them to cause further chaos. This signified the start of the Northwest Rebellion. At Fish Creek, 60 Métis under the leadership of Gabriel Dumont clashed with 1,600 NWMP soldiers. This group of 60 Métis repelled and delayed the advancement of the NWMP by a day. The NWMP were later reinforced but did not reach Batoche until May 9th. The last stand was at Batoche, where 725 NWMP soldiers attacked 125 Métis. Despite having less modern equipment, the Métis stood their ground for 3 days. However, in those 3 days, the Métis had 16 dead and 30 wounded, and the NWMP not much better off, with 8 dead and 46 wounded. At the end of the battle, Dumont fled to America whilst Riel stayed behind. After the defeat of Métis at Batoche, the NWMP tracked down and captured the Aboriginal leaders alongside with Riel. Whilst the leaders were given light sentences and or pardoned, Riel was taken to Regina and charged with high treason, which was punishable by death. The trial took place in July 1885, where Riel was defended by 3 lawyers who tried to convince the jury against Riel's will by claiming that Riel was not guilty by reason of insanity. However, by this time, Riel had already resigned to death, and in his summation stated the mistreatment of the Métis and the rebellion was a result of the government's irresponsibility. In the end, Riel was found guilty of high treason, but both the judge and jury recommended clemency. The Canadian government refused to give mercy, and Riel was hanged on November 16, 1885.